Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Family Law Talk.
Family Law Talk.
Presented by Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm, PC. Stange Law Firm is a family law firm with offices in Missouri and Illinois. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Family Law Talk. The topic today is inability to compromise a divorce cause. This is definitely an interesting topic and one we wanted to go into today. As a follow-up to the episode, you can go to familylawheadquarters.com, check out an article that we have dated April 3rd, 2016, and the title of that article is Inability to Compromise is a Cause of Divorce. Definitely an interesting topic, one we wanted to talk about here today. Obviously, marriages can break down for all kinds of different reasons, and folks are surveyed or asked why ultimately they're getting divorced. Individuals can mention all kinds of different causes, all kinds of different reasons. So obviously we can't go through each and every one of those, but some of the reasons folks might cite when they list why ultimately they think their marriage fell apart, they might cite things like financial disagreements. In other words, lots of individuals can argue about money in terms of spending in the marriage. This can be a big source of disagreement. In some marriages, one party might be more a saver, one party might be more a spender, for example, and that can cause problems. In some marriages, lack of intimacy would be a reason cited by the parties. For whatever reason, some marriages just seem to lose the magic. They lose the intimacy. The marriage becomes more like just a cohabitation situation where there's not a whole lot of intimacy, not a whole lot of love, and that might be something both parties cite. One party might have a bigger complaint than the other, for example, in a divorce. So that would be one cause. Some folks cite just that they grew apart. In other words, who they were when they got married has changed over time. Now they have different goals, they have different aspirations, really different life dreams, and that this might ultimately be the reason some folks indicate that they're getting divorced. It can be commitment issues or adultery, right? So in some marriages, the situation arises where one party or maybe both parties aren't faithful in the marriage, so they're just not committed to it anymore. You've got adultery there. Individuals are interested in other relationships or whatnot. This is an often cited reason for divorce, kind of in line with the financial issues and just kind of the growing apart. Sometimes different folks just have different really priorities, right? This can be situations where maybe one party is working a lot, can be a situation where one party to marriage is interested in more a different type of lifestyle versus working. They could be interested in more leisure, family-type activities. The other party's just not into that, or that's just not the priority to them, and ultimately this could be the cause for divorce. But really the topic today is this, which is an issue which can be sort of the prelude to all these different causes of divorce. In other words, it can be the first domino to drop, if you will, and that is this, which is communication issues in a marriage. Some folks just have an inability ultimately to communicate with each other, and this inability to communicate can oftentimes manifest itself in an inability to compromise. So when you get into all these different types of issues that are out there, take the financial disagreements, right? To stay married, to avoid divorce, oftentimes it's important for parties to meet in the middle, to compromise. Maybe it's a situation where the wife lets the husband get his way on some things, and the husband lets the wife get her way on some things or whatnot. But ultimately, you have compromise, you have give and take, and all of that can be worked out through effective communication. Same with the intimacy issues. Sometimes in a marriage, maybe the intimacy isn't there, but parties are able to talk about it. They're able to re-spark the magic, figure out what they need to do to bring the love and the affection back into the marriage. Same with the growing apart issues. If parties are able to compromise, communicate with one another, maybe they're able to have discussions about how both their goals, both their aspirations and visions in life can be obtained by both parties. but it's a situation where both parties, in essence, win. So it's win-win type solutions through compromise. Adultery or commitment type issues, obviously that can be a big issue in a marriage. But for parties who are having, marital problems in terms of adultery or commitment, maybe they're able to talk to the extent where they're able to agree to go to counseling. They're able to work through these issues. They're able to talk about what got them where they were, where the lack of commitment came into play or the adultery or whatnot, and they're able to work this out. And same with different priorities, right? Folks have different priorities. They're able to talk through these issues or whatnot. But for some, the reality of the situation is compromise just isn't a reality for them, right? All these types of issues, all these different types of decisions that can come into play. Oftentimes kid issues can be big in terms of agreeing how to parent children, and that can come into play. But in a marriage that works, ultimately the parties are able to compromise and they're able to communicate on a lot of different levels to avoid the marriage really being brought to the brink of divorce, being brought to DEFCON, if you will, avoid the marriage really at the end of the day becoming a match of chicken, if you will, on some of these really important decisions. But in some circumstances, it's just not possible. The parties try. They can't compromise. Maybe the personality issues are such that compromise is just not really a possibility for them. Maybe they go to counseling. Maybe they attempt to communicate and talk. It just doesn't work. In certain circumstances, it can become adversarial. It can become argumentative. And ultimately, it becomes a standoff such that there gets to be so much discord in the marriage that then these different things transpire. In other words, a domino falls, and they grow apart to such an extent they can't save their marriage. Here's the interesting thing. So take these cases where there's been so much inability to compromise, so many difficulties communicating with one another that divorce, right, becomes the end result. So somebody ultimately hires an attorney. They complete the paperwork. They file the case, and they begin their divorce action. The interesting irony is that in the eyes of lots of folks, right, so outsiders who aren't getting divorced, right, could be, you name it. It could be friends, could be family members out there. Oftentimes, this can be court-related, so it can be the attorneys on the case, maybe a guardian ad litem who's appointed to represent the kid's interests. Maybe it's the judge's perspective. If the parties go to mediation, maybe it's the mediator's perspective. But the belief of many is, why can't these folks compromise in order to get this case done, right? In a lot of instances, an outside observer would look at the case and say, there's not a whole lot substantively here. It could be a case where maybe there's not a lot of assets, right? Or maybe it's a case where there's a whole lot of assets. But to an outside observer, folks would think compromise, right? You're going to split these items in half. That's going to resolve this case, and you can get out of the court system, not spend a lot of money on attorney fees, not have to go through all the emotional havoc that results from a family law case that's contested. Why not settle, right? Take cases where there's kids involved, both parents, really pretty good parents, no significant concerns about one parent or the other. They're both pretty good parents. Lots of outside observers would look at that and say, why not do joint custody? Why not agree to a custody schedule where both parties ultimately get a lot of time with the kids, and then let's settle and resolve the case. And then same with spousal support issues or child support issues. To a lot of outside observers, they would look at it and think, you can look at the dynamics of this case. In child support and spousal support, it's either warranted or not. And if it's warranted, you can run child support calculations. You can look at income and expenses for maintenance purposes, and it ought to be pretty easy. Why not compromise? Why not settle the case? And so listen, here's the thing. Obviously, to outside observers, and I'm one in many cases as well, it's easy to look at these cases and think of it practically like that. And obviously, it would be wise for a lot of parties going through a divorce to compromise, to be practical, to look at it and communicate with one another to come up with a reasonable solution, with a reasonable outcome to the case. And that makes a whole lot of sense. The problem, again, takes you right back to the beginning in a lot of these cases, which is why are the parties getting divorced in the first place? And the truth of the matter is, in a lot of cases, that initial domino that dropped was an inability to communicate and then an inability to compromise, and that ultimately caused the marriage to result in a divorce. And so having said that, it's kind of ironic in a lot of ways to think that parties would then have a really easy time communicating and compromising to settle the case when their inability to do that in a lot of ways got them where they were in the first place, which is a divorce in family court. And so difficult, right? So most folks should settle their divorce or family law matter. It certainly makes sense. The reality is it's just not easy. And so for a lot of folks, it's not easy for them to communicate, and I think in those cases it's important for the attorneys to really work with their clients diligently to try to bridge gaps where possible. In a lot of cases, it might mean sending the parties to mediation, and that mediation might be best served before the divorce is even filed. That way the parties have a lot of time to communicate, to work through the issues, to get to a place to where they're able to communicate. It could mean collaborative divorce, which is a unique process through the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. And again, this is better and should take place before the divorce is even filed because, again, it gives the parties lots of time. Now, in some cases, mediation, collaborative law can be difficult, maybe not wise if there's domestic violence. If you have jurisdictional issues, maybe if one party's concealing assets or squandering assets, then maybe the case has to be filed and it needs to move forward. But in cases where the parties truly want to settle, but they have a hard time communicating and compromising, in a lot of these cases it can be wise to talk to an attorney about collaborative divorce or mediation and to explore that before the divorce case is even filed. Again, definitely an interesting topic, one I wanted to cover today. And again, the topic is inability to compromise a divorce cause. In other words, it's a leading cause of divorce is the inability of people to communicate. And so that inability to communicate can then manifest itself in a divorce, which means a case that to outside observers ought to be settled. Ultimately, it can be hard for that to take place. As a follow-up to the episode, again, go to familylawheadquarters.com. We have an article there dated April 3rd, 2016, titled Inability to Compromise is a Cause of Divorce. So you could definitely check that out as a follow-up to the episode today. That concludes our episode today. Stay tuned to our next episode on Family Law Talk coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Family Law Talk with Kirk Stange. Visit StangeLawFirm.com for more about today's topic or to put Stange Law Firm to work for your family today. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertisements. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri or Illinois reviews or approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The information you obtain on this podcast is not, nor is it intended to be legal advice. You should contact an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation. We invite you to contact us and welcome your calls, letters, and electronic mail. Contacting us does not create an attorney-client relationship. Please do not send any confidential information to us until such time as an attorney-client relationship has been established. And finally, past results afford no guarantee of future results, and every case is different and must be judged on its own merits.
Kirk Stange is responsible for the content. Principal place of business, 120 South Central Avenue, Suite 450, Clayton, Missouri, 63105.
Get great holiday savings with digital coupons at Safeway. This week at Safeway, get bone-in USDA choice beef ribeye roast for $5.97 per pound with digital coupon. Limit 1 while supplies last. Plus, get large gold pineapple for just 97 cents each with digital coupon. Limit 1. Also this week at Safeway, get bone-in signature select classic ham, shake half or whole for only 87 cents per pound with digital coupon. Limit 2 items. Visit Safeway.com or head in store for more deals.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office.
More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.